Hi everyone, welcome to Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast, where I share lesson ideas, songs, games, and inspiring things for your elementary music classroom. My name is David Rao, and I am the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. This episode of the podcast is a replay containing the audio version of a Musical Mondays live video. If you're not familiar with Musical Mondays, every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I go live on Facebook and Instagram to share about the lessons that I'm using in class with my students. I give a recap of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons, and then do a deep dive about one grade level and share the books, instruments, songs, and process that I use to teach the lesson to kids. This podcast episode contains all the audio from the Musical Mondays video, but if you'd like to see a replay of the video itself, you can find a link to the archived video on YouTube when you click the link in the notes for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's the show. Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Pinterest, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. Tonight, I'm going to be talking just a little bit about things that are going to happen in November to help you sort of think ahead. And so I'll get to that in just a second. If you hear me but as a quick reminder, if you hear me talk about a book, a resource, a website, something you're interested in that I've talked about in these videos, I put all of that stuff on a page on my blog. I call it the links page. It's on my blog, makemomentsmatter.org. You can click the video tab and find it there. Or if you're watching or listening somewhere, probably it's at the bottom of the caption for this video, so you can just find it easier. Just click and go there. That's basically my only preamble for tonight. I want to get into a little bit of stuff so that you can think ahead for November and think ahead what you might use in your classroom, the resources and processes, so that you're thinking ahead of time before that jumps up, because it's coming very fast. It's going to be here really soon. And so it just a reminder, in the last couple weeks, the past 9 weeks I've done these videos, I've talked about like a use it and a lose it, like something you might want to use and something you might want to get rid of or stop doing. And so in this video, it's sort of the same idea, a use it and lose it. And I'm going to let you sort of decide what those are, because there are a couple different things that you might use and some things that you might decide to take out of your practice as we think about November and think about the things coming up in November. And because I know that when I talk about like a book, you may want to buy it, you may want to get it from your local library, you may want to take time to research and think about. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is something that you want to think more about and have more time to process before you try and bring this up in your classroom. So what comes in November? Well, November does a couple things. First of all, Thanksgiving is a big thing that comes up, and a lot of us celebrate that here in the United States and get time off for that, which is great and is very exciting. And a lot of us just think ahead to when's the next time I have a break. And so the Thanksgiving break is great, but also I know that also some of the things that happen in November, there are Veterans Day. A lot of people do Veterans Day concerts. There's sometimes pushes for concerts or assemblies based around Thanksgiving, things like that. Also, November is Native American History Month, and so if you plan to highlight that, and I hope that you do, in your classroom, it's something to think ahead to. And so with both of those things in mind, Thanksgiving and Native American History Month, let's talk about what you might want to do to prepare for November and some things you might want to think about. So just my history, my context for this conversation. I grew up in the Plains. I grew up in Nebraska. And I grew up in a place where we talked about Native Americans quite a bit. There was a huge part of our history, when the pioneers set out, or the people took the Oregon Trail, or all of these ways when we talked about national expansion or the Louisiana Purchase, all of these things, it intersects with Native American history and all the things that the settlers did as they interacted with Native American tribes and Native peoples. So I grew up hearing a lot of that. In fact, the Native cultures are embedded in some really interesting ways in Midwestern culture, well, just American culture in general. But I live in Kansas, which is based on the name of the Kansa tribe, which is now the Kaw tribe. And I grew up in Nebraska, and the word Nebraska is a Native American word that means flat water. So I mean, there are all of these things that are Native American touch points or history or culture or words that are embedded. I mean, I live in Westwood Hills, Kansas, but I teach in Shawnee, Kansas, and the Shawnee Mission is very close to me. So there are all of these things that are a part of our culture, and it's interesting to think about as we go into November, how are we going to highlight that and bring that into our classroom, and how can we do that in ways that are respectful and thoughtful. I grew up in a school where people did put on plays around Thanksgiving, where you like brought in a paper bag and made a vest, or you made feathers to mimic what we thought or were told Native American tribes, the traditional regalia that they wore. And I have taught in places that have had like kindergarten classes walk down the hall to the music room, and they're all wearing paper bags that are supposed to look like vests, and they're all wearing sentence strip headbands with feathers on it to try and mimic what Native American tribes might wear as their regalia. And I have lived through that. So I've been the kid in that situation. I've also been a teacher when that's come down the hallway. So how do we, instead of parodying the culture, how do we integrate that in authentic ways? And I think there are some really interesting and thoughtful ways to do that without parodying. For example, we want to think about culture responsive ways to appreciate and not appropriate the culture. We want to think about ways that we can use music or dance or instruments in authentic ways, and not just try and say like, oh, well, this reminds me of whatever, so I'll just teach that. Like actually try and incorporate some cultural elements into our classroom. There are a lot of really cool ways to do that. So how can I adapt and adopt things for my classroom? First, I want to start by just understanding the culture. I want to start by understanding the Native American tribes and the First Nations that were in this area. If I'm going to teach, I'm not originally from Kansas, so if I want to teach my students who live here in Kansas, I want to learn the tribes that are in this area. I want to try and find connections to them to help them understand a little bit more before I try and teach that in my class. I want to figure out a way that is respectful and thoughtful and responsible, and not taking part of the culture that Native American tribes wouldn't want me to teach. I want to think about ways that I can bring in some of those cultural elements in ways that are respectful and thoughtful. And there are some really easy things to do. So the first thing, I found an article and I put it on the links page about how to find the Native American tribes. If you don't already know how to find the tribes and the First Nations that were on this land before we were, there's a really cool responsive map where you can put in your address and it will tell you what tribe was in the area where you reside or where your school is. It's a really easy free tool. I linked that on the links page. Another thing that was really helpful was I just looked up some articles about how to incorporate music into the classroom, how to think about Thanksgiving as it is told in our classroom, but from the perspective of a Native American tribe or of a member of one of those tribes. So a couple articles that are really cool that I linked on the links page. One of them is from the Smithsonian, and it's an article giving cultural context and ideas about Thanksgiving. And sorry, my computer just blanked out. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating, let me see if I can find this and read just a part of this. Ooh, there we go. It was talking about Thanksgiving in the classroom, and this quote is, when children are young, they're often exposed to antiquated images of American Indians through cartoons, books, and movies. But Thanksgiving reenactments may be their most active personal encounter with Indian America, however poorly imagined, and many American children associate Thanksgiving actions and images with Indian culture for the rest of their lives. These cultural misunderstandings and stereotypical images perpetuate historical inaccuracy. So I thought that was really fascinating thing about when those kids are exposed to that at an early age, that is their touchstone. That is their understanding of what Native American culture is, because they've lived that, right? They've been in that place and they've felt and experienced what they thought was that culture. So giving them that, it helps build their worldview of what is, what is the Native American culture. So being really thoughtful about Thanksgiving or thoughtful about how you teach Native American culture, songs, music, dance, it's really important because that may be the student's one or only connection to that culture. Another really cool article I found was on the Decolonizing the Music Room website, which is a super and amazing resource. If you've never checked it out, please do. But there's this great article by Michelle Macaulay, and she's talking about how to find Native American music, how to integrate it in thoughtful ways. And she talks about some of the history of how people have tried to bring that into the classroom in the past. She really stresses making local connections. Find the people who are in your area, who are culture bearers, who are members of Native tribes in your area, part of those First Nations, and you can find them pretty easily if you reach out and look. She says if you want to have a better understanding, go see that music happening in real life. There are powwows every weekend. There are different, ways for you to connect to the actual things as they're happening. She also talks about how you can find a lot of songs in their cultural context being used by the people of that culture, but you can find them on social media or YouTube, things like that, because a lot of times they're posting them there, so you can find and actually see that happening. And then she says go find those people, make connections, reach out and ask. They probably would want to make those connections with you, but also you can find a lot of those things online. And then she gives really, really great ideas about how to teach actual songs in thoughtful and responsive ways. It's not just taking a song and using it in your classroom. It's trying to find the context, trying to find the history. And a lot of times when we do that, we find that maybe the song that we thought was an example is not really a good example. The song Land of the Silver Birch is not actually a Native song. It's like this romanticized version of that, and it's not really actually accurate. And so a lot of people have pulled that out of their curriculum because if we're trying to say that it is a representation of the culture, it actually should be from that culture. But there are some really, really great things in Michelle's article, so I hope you go and read that. I'm not going to put more in there about that because I want you to go and read it because her writing is really great. That's linked on the links page. But as I was saying a second ago about if kids, if their only understanding is what they live and feel in those reenactments in their school, that's going to build their worldview of what Native American culture really is. And there are some really easy ways for us to teach authentically and help kids build their worldview in a more authentic way. And I always like to think back to when I was in college. I took a world religions class with Dr. Smerek, and I loved that class. Part of what we did was we went through the major religions of the world, and for each one, we read a little bit about it. We read a little bit about the history, we got some facts, we saw some of the symbols and imagery that they use. We talked about some of their most high holy days or important days. We talked about some of the biggest tenets of the religion. And that was all the factual stuff. And then for each major religion, we had to read a novel where the main character, the protagonist, the story was based around someone who lived as a part of that world religion. So for Buddhism, we read a certain book. For Judaism, we read a book. For Islam, we read a book. For Christianity, we read a book. It was to give you a better understanding, because if you live through that person's story, you understand the culture so much better. You understand their context so much better. And that I've sort of carried that idea as I come into my own classroom and think okay, maybe my students can't go to South Korea. Maybe they can't go to Ghana. Maybe they can't go and be a part, even New York or something. But if I can read them a story and they can feel what it's like to be in that story and see the context of that, reading the story helps them understand the culture so much better. And so whenever I'm doing something where I'm trying to be intentional about a culture that I am not a part of, or that we are not a part of, I try and bring in stories that are from that culture to actually give kids a better understanding. So here's some stories that I really like to use that pertain to Native American cultures, indigenous cultures in general, but specifically Native American, because my students are in the United States. So one book that I really, really love, and you're going to see a couple books from this author today, is this book called I Am Native by Violet Duncan. I found Violet Duncan through a friend a couple years ago, and I went and bought all of the books that she wrote, and they're all great. But this first, and I think that you can only, well, when I bought them a couple years ago, you could only buy them from her website, which I believe is violetduncan.com. But now they might be on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, I don't know. But this one is really great because, again, if we're trying to give our students understanding about Native American culture and the context, this one gives them a really, really fascinating context. Because I think a lot of kids are like, oh, Native American tribes back in the day. Like, talking about, like, living on the plains or living in a teepee or being nomadic. Like, a lot of times we teach them the history, but they don't always see the now. And that's a huge oversight that kids don't see the right now. So, for example, I love this page. I am Native. I'm a dancer. I dance the jingle dress dance. My mom braids my hair in 2 braids. I dance to bring healing and happiness to the powwow with my family. And then it says, in Native cultures, boys grow their hair long. It's a sign of a warrior. And then on the opposite page, it says, I am Native. I am a dancer. I dance in ballet class. My mom wraps my hair in a tight bun. In my dance class, I practice different ballet positions in my tutu. So it shows like maybe a more historical view or something that looks more like maybe what our kids would imagine if they're going from that historical perspective. And then today, what that might look like today. So like hoop dancing or playing basketball. And then we have cooking, traditional foods paired with cooking more contemporary foods. Creating traditional art through like beadwork and design, creating contemporary art. So it's showing that like Native peoples are not just a thing of the past, but they are currently living. Because I think our students miss that sometimes, and they only see like the historical representation of Native cultures, and they don't see the right now. So this book is really great because it's like paired on each page. Traditional Native American music, current contemporary creations of music with contemporary instruments. And just sort of pairs out on each page. And I love that. It's a great book. This is by Violet Duncan called I Am Native. If you, I see Shelly on Facebook just said it's out of stock on her website. Send her an email. It might be that it's just like out of stock on the website, but she might like have a box on the side. I mean, if she's selling it from her website, it's worth emailing and asking. Okay, so a couple more books that I think are really, really wonderful. Here's one that I love, another one by Violet Duncan. This one's called Let's Hoop Dance. I teach this one every year. And this one goes through and tells the story of Violet Duncan's son, Naichi. There once was a boy named Naichi. Naichi loved to dance. He would dance from morning until night. His favorite dance was the hoop dance. Every day he would wake up his dad and say, "Let's hoop dance." It talks about how he takes his hoops everywhere with him. He really loves doing hoop dancing. Then he goes out with his dad and they like go through some of the things that they do when they are hoop dancing. So he wakes up in the morning, when I go hoop dance. So he talks about the tradition of why they hoop dance, how they hoop dance, what are some of the things that he uses for representation. The hoops are representative of, a circle that's never ending, the sun, the moon. And then let's see, further on where they say like 2 hoops, they remember the balance of life, hot and cold, up and down. They make hoops that look like a sphere, like the earth. They make one that looks like a snake. They do all these things that are like how the hoop might be used. I love when he does the eagle. So this is just a really cool book that talks about the traditional practice of hoop dance. How do I use this in the classroom? Well, first I read the book. There's a great video of Tony Duncan, who's Violet Duncan's husband, also the son of Naichi, and actually the guy featured in this book. There's a video of him actually doing hoop dancing with traditional Native American music in the background. And so it's like, again, like I said earlier, like you can find those videos. They're out there. There's a really great video of him doing that. I don't then give out hoops to all my kids and say, okay, we're going to do it. But what I do talk about is because it's not my tradition. It's not our tradition. What I do talk about is how they use the hoops in really fun and imaginative ways. Like they make them look like an eagle, or they make the hoop come together. You have to use your imagination a little bit sometimes. Is that really a ball? No, it's just a couple of hoops that are put together, and it's sort of spherical, but you have to imagine the rest. So then we take other objects in our classroom, we imagine what they might be if we're going to take them and use them in a different way. You could take an instrument and you could do that. You could take a scarf and do that. And it's taking like sort of the idea of using that hoop and using it to represent other things, but not like saying like, okay, now I'm going to play the drum and you're going to grab that hoop and you're going to do... No, I'm not going to do that with kids because it's, again, not my tradition and not my history, but I can use the idea of like representation, that I can show the students what actual hoop dancing looks like, and it's still happening today. So this is a cool way that I can integrate with even some of my youngest students, what that tradition is like. Okay, a couple more books I really want to highlight. There are two more that I'm going to show you the inside of, and then a couple more ideas. This book is fairly new. It's called Powwow Day. I got this just this year. I think it was published in 2022. So definitely worth checking out, but you're probably not going to find it at the used bookstores. Ooh, I see Shelly on Facebook said that I Am Native is available on Amazon. Hooray, go check that out. That's by Violet Duncan. Okay, this book, let me read just a part of this. River, wake up, Amber whispers. My eyes open. Today is Powwow Day. Then I remember. No dancing. No jingle dress competition for me. Not at this tribal powwow. I wish my hair weren't still so short, I sigh. Mama lays out the moccasins that match my dress. But everyone wants to see you, Amber reminds me. Why? I can't dance like I could before I got sick. But you will dance again, she responds. I stay silent as Daddy drives us towards the powwow grounds. I usually savor the scents of sage and sweet grass, but not today. The breeze prickles my skin. I'm tired already. Daddy arranges our chairs near the family drum. Mama squeezes me close. Doing okay? I nod, but I'm not. I watch my friend Dawn get ready to dance. No, I'm not okay. Then the powwow begins as the MC calls, Time for grand entry, stand up. Gentlemen, remove your hats. My uncles strike a large drum together. Bam, 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 bam. They sing, Eya, we-e-ya. I make a decision. At least I can dance grand entry. You sure? Amber asks. Yep. Grandpa leads with the eagle staff. Other warriors carry flags into the arena. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Elders head up the long line, the oldest to youngest. Traditional, fancy, grass, and jingle dress. And it goes through, it talks about some of the things that happen in the powwow, why they dance, how they're dancing. It talks about the shapes they make, what they're doing to represent, why they're doing that. Talks about some of their prayers for healing, their prayers to the Creator. And it talks about like tribal dances, intertribal dances, how the drum beat sort of surrounds you, how you can sort of feel that drum beat because it's such a big sort of deep sound, and how she can sort of feel it as it's happening. And she doesn't feel like she can dance all the things. She's sort of sad when her friends are dancing and she's not able to be a part of it. But it talks about the jingle dress dancing, what it sounds like, what it's like to be there when they hear it. And then she says they're dancing for each other, they're dancing for families, they're dancing for me. And then she says, even though I know I can't dance now, I will dance again. So a girl who was sick wasn't able to dance, but why... why is she still there at the powwow? How could she sort of knows that she's still a part of this. They're dancing for her, they're dancing with her. And I just love that connection, how it just showcases like why they're doing the dance and what that part, what that's like. I also just love the images. I think the images are just so colorful and beautiful, but also they show such great movement. You could absolutely pair this with like one of the videos I talked about earlier when Michelle in her article was saying like, look for this on social media, look for it on YouTube. You can find some really great examples. This would be a great book to help pair with, to help explain some of the things they might see in those dances of actual people dancing at a powwow, and would give them a lot more context. Also, the word powwow gets thrown around and used all the time in our culture and without the cultural context. So this would give kids way more of an understanding of what actually happens at a powwow, and not like years and years ago, but like today, now. What does this mean? And so giving them this understanding through this book is really powerful. And like I said, it's really cool because not only does the illustration show all of the movement, it gives you the understanding of like the what you hear in the drum and how you feel that, and kids can make connections with that when they go to like a big music concert. They go to something they can hear and feel and experience the music in new ways. And so this is a really cool book. But like I said, this is brand new, so you're probably not going to find it at a used bookstore. Go out and buy it from the author. It's worth it. Okay, another book that I want to share that I'm going to read just a little bit of, and then I'm going to go over a couple more things. There's this book. This is new to me. This is called Night Dancer. This is by Marcia Vaughn. Ooh, sorry. I don't know if I said Powwow Day is by Tracy Sorrell, illustrated by Madeline Goodnight. And I have linked all these on the links page if you're like, I want to go find that. I put it there in case, so you don't have to go searching for it. Night Dancer, this is by Marcia Vaughn, illustrated by Lisa Desamini. I'll read just a couple pages of this one. As moonlight washes across the canyon, a figure as old as time steps from the rocks and raises his flute. Kokopelli, the mystical musician of the Rio Grande, plays an ancient melody, inviting all desert dwellers to join his jubilant dance. Luminous moon bursting with light sweeps the darkness from the desert night. Shadows grow, shadows stretch. One shape leaps into sprightly steps. Kokopelli. Merry minstrel of the night, he lifts his flute and pipes a tune. Come dance, come dance, come dance with me, stepping and stamping joyously. Like the stars in the wind, happy and free, who'll dance away this night with me? Sweet song, secret song, echoes off canyon walls, rushes through arroyos, whispers past the pueblo. Atop the cliff, Coyote listens. She tosses back her head and howls. I will dance with you on this desert night, stepping and stamping in the moon-bright light. Sweeping her tail from side to side, Coyote climbs nimbly down the cliff to join the night dancer. And Kokopelli dances along, leaping and laughing and playing his song. Come dance, come dance, come dance with me, sliding and gliding gleefully, like the stars in the wind, happy and free. Who'll dance away this night with me? And then it goes on. They add a snake. They add a tortoise. They add the javelina. They add a jackrabbit. So they just keep adding more and more things. Tumbleweeds even join in. But it's basically this idea of Kokopelli. And I did not know before I started researching Kokopelli that it's like not just... I know it says at the beginning, what does it say here? Like Rio Grande. And it shows like a desert scene. But the Kokopelli has shown up in a lot of different native cultures across a much larger swath than just like the southwest of the United States. So it's in a lot of different cultures. It's shown up a lot. And also it's a pretty recognizable image if you've ever been in that area or seen artwork. So this is a really cool one that talks, it talks about this mystical figure, the Kokopelli, but you could also then relate it to like how do animals move? How do we move? How you can be, joining in this night song. I just love that like the Kokopelli is related to dance and music and is a part of this culture that you could bring out and share with kids pretty easily. It's called Night Dancer. But there are so many more books. So a couple honorable mentions that I just don't have time to talk about tonight. I also love using books to talk about and explain the history of famous musicians and dancers. So a couple that you might check out is this one, Maria Tallchief, the first Native American ballerina. I have another book about her. There's this one, Tallchief, America's Prima Ballerina. So the first one I mentioned is from the Children's Biography book series, Biography of Famous People. The second one is Maria Tallchief with Rosemary Wells. This one, though, it gets a little long, so it's harder to use. There's just a lot of text, so it's harder to use in like a read-aloud sort of a setting. But both are great, both about Maria Tallchief, who's the first prima ballerina in the United States. First Native American prima ballerina. There's this one. She sang Promise, the story of Betty Mae Jumper, Seminole tribal leader. Another one that's just really easy to use the book to explain and give more history and context about who does. This one also does have quite a bit of text, so you may want to use. Check it out from your library. Decide how you would want to use that in your classroom. If you maybe want to read part of it, read just a little bit, read once a little bit a day. You know, how could you maybe use it? Maybe in a center would be good. And then here are a couple more. These are not Native American, but First Nations from our friends up north in Canada. So the first one is Simone and the Dance Contest. This one's by Inhabit Media, and which is a publishing house. If you find anything by them, it's all good. So any of their books are good. But this one is especially good, and I've shared about this one in a previous year, talking about how Simone wants to be part of this dance contest and how he does a jig dance, and which is a traditional thing from a couple First Nations tribes in Canada. Super cool book. Go check that one out. Another one is this one called Fiddle Dancer. This one's by Ann Padden and Wilfred Burton. This is not an Inhabit Media publication, but it's also just a really great one. Totally worth checking out and reading. There are so many more books. I have a whole stack of them here that I could pull out and read and talk about, but I've started a list on Amazon, which is, just a way for me to catalog all the great books that you can check out. You do not have to buy them from Amazon, but I made the list there so that you can go and find them. And the cool thing about Amazon, it's sort of like a Pinterest for stuff, if you want to use it that way. I like to make lists that have all of my favorite things, and then oftentimes I'll go and buy them somewhere else. But the great thing about the Amazon listing is it has the book, it has the publisher, it has the ISBN, it has the author's information, it has all the identifying information, so that if I can't find it at a used bookstore, I can take all that information and I can help look it up somewhere else. I can take it to my library, or I could buy it from Amazon if I want it. But that's linked on the links page in case you want to go and find more books with Native American characters, protagonist stories, but also just Native people in general, so First Nations from all around the world. Anyway, after everything I said the last 20 minutes, I hope that you take away that you can incorporate Native American culture into your classroom in really authentic and interesting ways. You can bring in books, you can bring in stories and videos and songs and music. You can do this in ways that are not cultural appropriation, but are appreciation. The thing that you just want to think about is, remember that what you do in your classroom helps build the worldview of your students. So if you're giving them just like a parody or just like a not really authentic example, they're going to believe that that is the example of what it is. If you're only giving them, Native American culture, this is what it was like when pioneers came through or when, the Oregon Trail happened, they're going to believe that that is Native American culture now, if that's the only context they have for it. So give them context and things that help them understand the cultures now. Give them touch points for the culture as it is currently live and living today. And then don't be afraid to reach out to people in your area, because a lot of times you can find really great resources or connections to your local tribes, or ways to make musical connections, but also just great connections with your school community and that tribe. There are lots of great things you can do. Okay, check out the articles on my blog, on the links page. Check out the book resources. If you this is at one time, especially if you have a great recommendation about a book with a Native American character or protagonist or storyline, please send that to me. I'd love to add that to my list of books. I am specifically looking about books from the Kaw Nation. There are not a ton. So if you have any great books that are really great for kids, I would love to have that, because my school is right in the middle of the Kaw Nation. So I'd love to be able to have more things that I can use for my kids there. Okay. Bye everyone. Thanks. Have a good night.